In the humid darkness of 1918 New Orleans, the Axeman of New Orleans emerged without warning, shattering the fragile calm of a city already restless with heat and noise. The nights were thick with the scent of magnolia and coal smoke, the streets alive with the echo of jazz spilling from open windows. Yet behind the music, fear began to take root. Families locked their doors, slid bolts across shutters, and whispered about the figure who slipped through homes like a shadow. The attacks came without pattern: grocers, couples, entire households, each scene marked by the same brutal precision and the same weapon, an axe often taken from the victim's own property. The city's police force, accustomed to barroom fights and riverfront thefts, suddenly faced something far more elusive. The killer left no clear motive, no theft, no personal vendetta that investigators could trace. Only the sound of splintered wood and the heavy silence that followed. As summer pressed on, the air itself seemed to hold its breath. Newspapers printed every detail they could gather, and still the questions multiplied. Who was he? Why did he choose them? And how could anyone stop a man who seemed to vanish into the night as easily as he came? When the first officers arrived at the scenes, they found doors forced open with clean, deliberate strikes, as though the intruder knew exactly where to aim. Lanterns flickered against plaster walls, streaked with soot and blood. Neighbors stood outside in their nightclothes, murmuring prayers, clutching children close. The police worked by lamplight, measuring footprints in the dirt, collecting fragments of broken locks, and noting the absence of valuables. It was not robbery, it was something colder. The victims were often found in their beds, the axe left behind, its handle slick with humidity and something darker. Detectives moved cautiously, marking each detail in notebooks, the scratch of pencils the only sound besides the distant hum of insects. Reporters gathered at the edges of the cordoned streets, their notebooks filling with rumors. Some claimed to have seen a tall figure moving through the alleys. Others swore they heard laughter carried on the wind. The coroner's wagon creaked through the narrow lanes, horses stamping nervously as bodies were lifted inside. By dawn, the city's rhythm resumed, but the tension lingered. Shopkeepers swept their thresholds in silence, and the morning papers carried headlines that made breakfast tables go still. The investigation unfolded in a city divided by language, culture, and class, each neighborhood offering its own theory. Detectives canvassed the Italian Quarter, the Garden District, and the riverfront, questioning grocers, laborers, and musicians. They examined axes from hardware stores, compared blade widths, and checked for recent purchases. Evidence was stored in wooden crates at the precinct, tagged by hand, the ink smudged by the damp air. Officers worked long nights, tracing the faintest lids. An unfamiliar man seen near a grocery, a strange knock heard before dawn. Patrols increased, and citizens began forming their own watch groups, patrolling streets with lanterns and shotguns. The city council debated curfews, while church bells tolled for the dead. In the evenings, jazz still played, but now it carried a nervous edge, the notes sharper, faster, as if the musicians themselves were trying to drown out the fear. Families nailed extra boards across their doors, and locksmiths could not keep up with demand. The police chief held press conferences, promising progress, but behind closed doors, frustration grew. Every clue seemed to dissolve under scrutiny. The killer left no fingerprints, no clear trail. Only the echo of violence and the uneasy knowledge that he could strike again at any time. Then came the letter. Delivered to a local newspaper, it was written in a tone both mocking and theatrical, signed by someone claiming to be the Axeman himself. He described himself as a spirit, a demon of the hottest hell, and promised another attack. But there was a strange condition. He claimed that any home playing jazz on a particular night would be spared. The city reacted with a mix of disbelief and dread. Musicians were hired for private gatherings, phonographs spun through the night, and for once, every corner of New Orleans pulsed with the same rhythm. The police analyzed the letter's handwriting, the paper stock, the ink, but nothing led to a suspect. Theories multiplied. Some believed the killer was a deranged musician. Others thought he was a laborer moving from job to job, blending into the crowds. A few suggested multiple attackers, perhaps copycats feeding on the chaos. Detectives followed each lead until it collapsed under lack of evidence. The newspapers, hungry for updates, printed every rumor, fueling both panic and fascination. When months passed without another killing, some dared to hope it was over. But the fear never fully left. Each creak of wood at night, each sudden silence in the music, reminded the city that he had never been caught. In the years that followed, the legend of the Axeman became part of New Orleans itself, woven into its folklore like the notes of a restless tune. The case remained unsolved, the files aging in dusty archives, their pages brittle but still disturbing to read. Historians and criminologists revisited the evidence, comparing it to later crimes, searching for patterns that might reveal a name. None did. The families of the victims carried the memory quietly, their descendants still speaking of locked windows, and the night the city played jazz to save itself. The story endured because it captured something deeper than fear. It showed how a community, divided in so many ways, could unite under threat, if only for a single night of music. Even now, when the streets grow still and a saxophone drifts from a distant bar, locals sometimes pause, listening for echoes of that uneasy era. The Axeman's identity remains a mystery, but his shadow lingers in the city's rhythm, a reminder of how terror once moved to the beat of jazz, and how New Orleans, scarred but unbroken, learned to keep playing.